everybody, welcome inside TCO Performance Center. Matthew Coller here, along with Alec Lewis of The Athletic, to break down a very compelling minicamp practice that we just saw. And I really want to talk more, Alec, with you about the minicamp and OTA, the spring as a whole, because today's practice didn't have a lot of news. It was a slower practice. I'm expecting to be a little more intense tomorrow, but there isn't like a throw by throw that we can do for JJ McCarthy. So why don't we begin with your breakdown of McCarthy, and then I got a little game for you to play here going forward, which I know you're very excited about. But I am curious to hear, because I've given my opinions and my viewpoint over the last few weeks on what I have seen from OTAs and minicamp from JJ McCarthy. But I have not asked you what you have thought of his performance so far. So tell me and everyone watching.
Yeah, first, thanks for having me. Always enjoyable to be on the show. Looking forward to speaking to all you listeners out there, wherever you might be. Your game is always, every time you ask me to come on the podcast, there's a hesitation because I know you've got something planned that is going to put me in a compromised position, with the journalism ethics that I try to keep on a day-to-day basis. As far as JJ McCarthy, look, I think the best way I know to describe it, and you've probably said similar, is if you pause time at the end of last year, right before that preseason game, right after that preseason game, and you didn't tell me anything that happened after that, and then you press play these last few weeks, I would have a hard time deciphering the difference between those two images, videos, throws. There is unquestionably a zip on his throws that differs from the other guys we see out there, and that is comparable to the quarterbacks who have started in this league and had success in this league that I've seen up close. There have been plays where it gets picked off, but I have said on my show and in writing many, many times that this is like the equivalent of watching Scotty Scheffler on the range before a major golf tournament. Like, you don't know what pin he's aiming at. You don't know the club that he's taking out of the bag to hit on the range. And so unless you get that information in the aftermath by talking to people, it's really hard to, have a real feel for what you saw. Overall, the fact he's been out there every day, the accuracy that he's kind of displayed, the athleticism is obviously there. It's everything that you would want to see at this point in the calendar of what is going to get a lot more. The eyes are only going to increase as things get to training camp. But I have no hesitation to say that it's been kind of everything I hope to see at this point.
The caveats just have to be said. There's no way around that it's not enough information to really make any sort of real conclusion about what he's going to be in the upcoming season, but we can make observations. And I think the biggest observation that I've had is how he's throwing the actual football. And I do agree with what you said, that if you went from the end of training camp and brought it back and it looks the same. But I think that even just the accuracy and consistency of throwing the ball accurately has been better in this camp than it even was in training camp, where I feel like there still was, and I even mean just where the ball is being put on wide receivers, the timing is going to take work. And that's the only thing that's been a little off at times, but it always is in OTAs and minicamp. It even was with Sam Darnold, where we were kind of freaking out over his arm talent and his connection with Jefferson in minicamp last year. But even still, that took time during training camp. And I think with the actual results, now it's interesting to ask everybody their viewpoint on an interception that someone throws in one of these. Like, what did you see? What did you think of that? Was it the decision? Was it how he threw it? Was it a great play from the defender? And it's sort of, that's what we do in football and makes it fun, is that everybody can watch it and kind of have different viewpoints. And so there's been a couple of interceptions there worth talking about what exactly is happening there. But I think the bigger, broader picture for, hey, how is JJ looking, is it's the physical part of it. This is a guy coming off of a very serious injury where he could not throw a football for a really long time. And now he's back throwing the football and looks every bit the part of a quarterback one. You mentioned it. If you walked out onto this practice and there were no numbers, you did not know what JJ McCarthy looked like, you've just been watching football practices a long time, you would have no mistake of who QB1 is. And the other part of it for me is that the practices have run smoothly. And when someone is way off at the quarterback position, it is choppy, it's ugly, it's players looking around, it's coaches having to constantly talk to somebody. What's going on there? We have not seen a lot of that. Those are the types of things that I would say it's on track for the best case scenario. That's how I would put it. Is I haven't seen anything from McCarthy or the offense or O'Connell or McCown or the receivers that would make me go, what's going on there? Not really a single time during this OTAs and minicamp.
Yeah, the two things that I want to say. The first that is probably important. You talk to people out here every day just like I do. And the one thing that we don't talk about with as professional as it has looked is how much they're putting on his plate right now, which is a lot. Like they are not this is the one aspect, and I've said this many times and written it, like Kevin O'Connell is this positive guy. He's incredible in interviews. He displays himself very optimistically, but he does not like run from a challenge or refrain from wanting to challenge guys. And in this camp specifically, they have done a lot of like throwing the entire book at him and seeing how much he can handle. And even like with protection calls, yes, Ryan Kelly probably has the answers with certain stuff, but they're not like having Ryan spoon feed him the answers in this type of camp because that's guardrails that maybe you'll have if it calls for it, but it's not necessary now as JJ's kind of exposed to everything. So I think that aspect of how they're trying to bring him along is a very positive one and is a very like sequential type of process that's probably important to consider. And the other thing that I wanted to say that is just piggybacking off what you said, like this is a very like physical type of evaluation right now for us. There's no like until the pass rush is bearing down on him and things are moving at the speed that only things move in game or in like legit full speed environments, you can't really get a feel for the processing speed, the decision making that ultimately typically dictates why guys succeed or why guys fail. So I'm with you. Like nothing that I've seen out here gives me any pause to believe that come the fall, like he's going to be ready to rock and things are going to be smooth. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. I don't expect to be perfect. I expect there to be training camp practices with the fans in the stands or joint practices with the Patriots out here where it's like a bad day and there's tough throws, there's interceptions on video and all of that, but like for me that's not going to be enough to overreact because I have a lot of faith in the process ultimately that they're kind of putting him through to get to that point.
At every different level of a practice and then preseason and joint practice, as you mentioned, I think we just have to change what our criteria is. And for this one, it was, does he look like the JJ McCarthy that impressed us so much at the end of training camp and in the preseason game last year? There aren't enough full speed reps to go, well, his rhythm and timing and feet and eyes are off or on or things like that. And even doing completions and incompletions is pretty silly at this point. But when we get into training camp, the first part of it is still everybody getting back in the mix. But once those pads come on, to me, that's where it becomes results for me, where you want to see a lot of completions. You don't want to see the ball hitting the ground. You don't want to see him taking sacks. You don't want to see slow processing, which he has not ever had since we've seen him out here. The processing part of it, I think, has been pretty good. And I was just thinking about today about how JJ McCarthy has taken in so much information, but think about it as if you were going to, like, if you're a golfer and you watch,
I try to be.
me too, watch a million YouTube video lessons from Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, and you spend 8 hours watching all these lessons, but you play one time a week. This is kind of me. And that's a lot of information you have and you know what to do, but you have to make your hands and arms and all that do it. And I think that that's McCarthy, where there's going to be probably some time when we get to training camp where all this information has been crammed into his head. So he knows it all. He knows what to do, but then he has to connect the physical elements to it. And we'll have some patience for that. But once we get into joint practices, those are Kevin O'Connell's preseason games. Like
Yeah.
those are his games that matter the most for evaluation, more so than preseason. And I'll be curious to see how much JJ actually plays in preseason, because I think where they're really going to treat it like this is what we need to accomplish to show where we're at is those joint practices. Okay, so here's the game, because we just didn't have a lot of updates. I didn't see Darisaw out there today. Is that right?
I want to give the listeners the one guy who I've had my eye on at all these practices who I really like.
Guys, if you watch the show all the time, you know that I'm a hat guy. But if you're wearing hats to cover up for your hair loss, then I've got something that can help you. It's called Hims. If you've lost your hair, that doesn't mean you can't find it again. Try Hims Hair Loss Solutions, and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who have found their hair again. Hims makes treating hair loss simple with clinically proven ingredients that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Choose from personalized chewable, oral, spray, or serum treatments to find what works best for you. The process is simple and 100% online, so there are no uncomfortable doctor visits. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/purple insider. That's HIMS.com/purple insider for your personalized hair loss treatment options. Him.com/purple insider. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See the website for full details and important safety information. Folks, I'm trying a new thing in order to stop going to fast food restaurants all the time with my busy schedule. It is called Tempo Meals. Tempo is a weekly delivery service that delivers chef-crafted meals from a dietitian-approved menu fresh to your door. Their perfectly portioned lunches and dinners take all the guesswork out of eating as well. They are fully prepared and can be heated up in the microwave in just 3 minutes. A couple of meals that I've got coming my way this week are the sweet and sour meatballs, the honey glazed pork chop, and the tender chipotle sirloin. Those are just my choices, though. There are dozens and dozens of options, and I figured it all out in about 5 clicks. So, for a limited time, Tempo is offering my listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/purple insider. That is tempomeals.com/purple insider for 60% off your first box. Tempomeals.com/purple insider. Rules and restrictions apply.
Zamaya Vaughn, the undrafted corner from Utah. I promise every practice since we've been out here, we can get to this game. I don't want to impede this game, but he's around the ball. He's making plays on the ball. He's fluid. He's athletic. He's mixed in with some of those like second team groups. I've got my eyes on this guy, and I just want these fans to remember, because here's the thing in this role. If he hits, man, they remember this is if he never no one ever talks about it. So it's a win-win from my standpoint, you know? And that's how it is. As a writer, you're putting yourself in win-win situations.
I have also noticed Zamaya Vaughn on a daily basis. He had an interception where he was falling out of bounds today in a goal line drill. He had a pass breakup in OTAs in a goal line drill. Kind of, some might say that he's long and lanky.
He's like, there's a lot of physical improvements out there. That's like the best thing that's the most you can glean, honestly, from some of this.
And you're very good at gleaning when players are long, and that makes them winners of this time of year. But when it comes to players who have stood out to me, and O'Connell said it's a passing camp. So, I mean, hey, Jordan Mason's really freaking big. Whoa. But that winner, sometimes people want to know what Donovan Jackson looks like big.
His pass set.
Yeah. I mean, looks good out there, just doing nothing in team drill. But when it comes to guys who have actually caught the football, the one who has stood out to me is tight end Ben Urasek,
okay,
undrafted free agent tight end that they gave a decent little amount of cash to on a daily basis.
Georgia.
I think he's made some plays for them out there, and we haven't seen Gavin Bartholomew much. He must have got banged up in one of the practices because he was at the first one, but we haven't seen him since. And I think that tight end 3 thing is wide open for Ben Urasek if he could be that guy to step up. He's big. He's got good hands, and we'll see. So there's your camp, your mini camp risers so far. Here's how the game works. In order to get really all of your takes out of you from minicamp and just with the Vikings in general, what I've decided, I want to call it player pass. So I am going to give an opinion of mine that I've probably talked about on the show at some point, and you can either say that you want to play and you want to break down that opinion and go back and forth on it, or you could just say that's not that interesting to me or whatever, and I'm going to pass. Okay.
That's fine.
All right. So
I don't know what you got. I'm curious.
all right, yeah, that's the best part. So here's the first opinion. Yesterday on the show, I made a very large announcement that after watching JJ McCarthy through this OTA and minicamp thus far, that I have changed my wins prediction for the Minnesota Vikings. And also I'll throw Frank Ragnow retiring into that. That's a huge deal. I had him when I picked the initial schedule at 10 wins, and now I have moved it up to 11 wins. Would you like to talk more about that, or do you want to pass?
No, I'll play. I mean, look, I've said this and written it. For me, like, yeah, with what you've seen from JJ, I think that's integral. It's the other key aspect, and like we've talked about this kind of in the media room around side feels like health is just such a pivotal factor in that eventual number. So it's difficult. It's difficult to prognosticate, even though that's our job oftentimes, what ultimately could happen. So 11 wins is, to me, if you win 11 games with JJ in his first year, that is an immense success. You're in the playoffs, obviously, at that point. The question for me, the other aspect is like the schedule's pretty difficult. So, you're expecting them probably to be able to navigate some of those like mid-season stretches that are pretty tough. So I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world. That's why I'm willing to play on this first opinion.
I think a big part of it for me is that, yes, it's going to be more difficult than last year because they don't play the AFC South, which was just 4 free wins for everybody.
Thank God we don't go to Jacksonville. My goodness.
Not my favorite either. Got really soaked and then had to fly home after that. And it was a very uncomfortable experience. Also, watching the game was not my favorite either. But it is more difficult. There's no question it's more challenging. And because of the uncertainty that exists with a quarterback that we've never seen play in the NFL, you can't just say, oh, well, they won 14 last year. It should be 13 or 14 this year and just do all the same stuff. But what they did, I think, was mitigate all the things that were clear reasons that they didn't win in the playoffs and problems. They addressed all of them. If you went into the offseason with an entire checklist that was 5 or 6 deep, you need another running back. You need to fix the interior. You need a little more receiver depth. You need an interior defensive line pass rush presence that everybody at the combine, all the GMs and coaches were being asked about after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. How are you going to recreate that in the playoffs? And there's also enough questions for me not to go back to 14 wins either, because we're still not entirely sure about how this secondary is going to play out. There's a lot of bets that they're making there that could hit or might not. And we don't know exactly what. There will be a learning curve for JJ McCarthy, but what is that learning curve look like? Last year for Bo Nix, there was a dip in the middle of the season in one game where he had like negative 10 yards at halftime. And he kind of came out of the other side of that and turned out to be a playoff caliber quarterback. How does JJ McCarthy navigate the ups and downs? I think are tricky, but to figure out and prognosticate. But we also know what this offense and what this supporting cast does for quarterbacks. There is a reason Sam Darnold was the best version of himself. And I've also just been wildly impressed with Justin Jefferson. Okay, yeah, obviously, but he's here. And the mentality he's taken on, I think, is even developed. And he said it when I asked him, and he said, this was important to me for just studying him and watching his progress as a superstar player. When he said he was not really comfortable being like that leadership guy. And last year, he proved to himself he could do it. They need every ounce of that this year. I think they've got that. I also think veteran teams win. Everyone loves young teams. They just love them. Oh, they've got so many recent draft picks. They got whatever. And then you get to the playoffs and it doesn't always work out. So I think veterans know how to stay on the field and they know how to handle very complex things that are thrown at them from these coaches, and that should guide them. But the division's hard enough that you can't really start going 12, 13, 14.
And I agree with you on a lot of that. I mean, this offense has produced 4,000 yards passing every season that Kevin O'Connell's been here. I mean, you said like the floor with the receiving court, like TJ Hawkinson to me is probably due to probably motivated to have a full season, take what he kind of generated over the course of the back half, specifically into that Bears game on the road. Like I remember I was pretty impressed there, but I just feel like Hawkinson is probably wants to get back to the close to the level of production he had in 2023, which was I believe 90 catches that year. The other question for me, besides obviously the uncertainty with JJ, the health overall, like defense doesn't tend to be as sticky year over year as offenses. And so, like, yes, Brian Flores has shown a willingness to evolve, to push the envelope, to maximize the talent. But like, can you sustain the level of run defense that they've had? Can you, create the level of turnovers that they created last year? That to me, like, if I was betting and putting my chips on, like, I'd probably say that I expect this defensive staff to maximize these guys again, specifically with the improved interior, with Blake Cashman another year in the system, with Theo Jackson, who I really believe in. But that is another area where, like, if that win total doesn't hit the place that I think you hope that it hits or you believe it might hit, that's probably another aspect of it that you kind of just assume on the outside, like Brian Flores defense is going to be a certain level. It's just so hard for that to bear out year over year.
Well, and normally when it comes to run defense, I would say, eh, it's okay if you don't have a great run defense. It's not okay this year. When you go through the teams they're going to play, right out of the gate, it's Ben Johnson. I don't have a great running back, but they do have a good offensive line that they've rebuilt. And then it's Atlanta and it's Bijan Robinson, and they know how to run the football as well with Zach Robinson as their offensive coordinator. And okay, you face Joe Burrow, but then you get down the road a little bit. It's the Lions again. Washington can run the football with their quarterback. You have the Ravens, you have the Eagles. Even the Dallas Cowboys have traditionally been a running team that's pretty effective. I don't know if they will be this year, but you're playing the two top running backs in the NFL from last year, quarterbacks who have been consistently great in the running game. And if that is a major weakness, then teams are going to be able to possess the ball a lot more than they were last year when they were stuffing the run, stay on the field a lot more. And sometimes when you hunt explosives as an offense, then you don't stay on the field as much in terms of times of possession. I think that was problematic at times. I do think that McCarthy will play a little bit less of a I'm always going to look for the downfield shot like Sam Darnold did, especially early on. And I don't blame him for that. It was very successful, but it did result in sometimes, oh, there's a 3 and out, and then the other team's got the ball. And toward the end of the season, I thought the defense did wear down with the other teams being able to possess the ball for a long period of time. That is one of those question marks that we'll have to see how it works out with the new rotation in the defensive line. They need somebody to step up, which brings me to my next player.
I knew you were segueing, so it was coming. I can see your pride.
Now, I could ask you before we move on, over under 10.5 wins.
I'd have to go through the schedule. That's like the Vegas over under. I think right now is 8.5. I'd say I hover around 10 is probably like where I'm. I could go right under. I could go right over. That's probably where I'm at.
I think 8.5 is a fairly easy one to go over on right now from what we've seen. 10.5 is much harder. Let's move on to the next one. And again,
defensive line.
You could just move on from this, or you can talk about it if you want to. Is there I think that there is going to be a major impact of the decisions that are made in the kick returning game. You want to talk about it or not? Play or pass?
The decisions that are made by the Vikings or around the league?
No, I mean, Matt Daniels, who is the punt returner, who is the kick returner. We talked to Matt Daniels today. I think it's going to have a big impact on this upcoming season. Play or pass?
I'm kind of going to pass it. Is that
Okay.
all right?
All right.
I like Silas Bolden, by the way, the undrafted returner guy, but it doesn't. It's special teams. I could see why you'd have the opinion, but I'm passing.
I just think with the increased kick return, I'm going to defend it and then we'll pass to the next one. I think with the increased kick return likelihood of volume, because they're moving it to the 35, that who they pick to put back there, if it's Isaiah Rodgers, if it's Ty Chandler, they have potential to make plays there and actually might have to be a little creative. You passed, so you have nothing else to say about this.
Okay.
Uh,
I'll think about it for next time.
and they don't have a punt returner right now. They do not have a punt returner. And so can Silas Bolden make it? Is it going to be Jalen Naylor? I feel like that's risky. Is Rondale Moore here to do that? They have not decided yet, but you cannot speak any more about that. Okay. I will say that Dallas Turner is going to finish this season with 7.5 sacks and 2 interceptions and a PFF grade of 74.8. That is my opinion. Would you like to play on that or would you like to pass?
Absolutely playing. Let me start you with this. Is his primary position on the edge, on the line of scrimmage?
I think so. I think what they'll do is they will rotate more Van Ginkel, because last year they asked Van Ginkel to play every single snap, and that was
unbelievable.
That was a lot. That was, and Grenard too. So I think they'll rotate. I think they'll move him to both sides, and on third downs there will be opportunities for him to free rush at the quarterback. I'm thinking that it's really a Patrick Jones like role, don't you? I mean, that Jones leaves, he just slides right into that role, and maybe it's a little more dynamic than that, but they had Patrick Jones dropping back in coverage. You pointed out in your article yesterday his great play out here in coverage that just shows freakish movement skill that we know he has. And also, there is just a long history of guys who do not get a ton of sacks in their first year and then take that big step the next year. I feel like he's going to be doing a lot more rushing than he is dropping back. I don't think it's going to be 12 sacks, but I think it's a big jump, kind of like Nolan Smith made for the Eagles last year.
Yeah, the other comp that to me is just as applicable is Nick Bonito. So Nick Bonito, for those the uninitiated, if you're listening to Purple Insider, you probably know Nick Bonito, but he's a Denver Broncos edge rusher who was drafted in the second round. He played at St. Thomas Aquinas, just like Dallas Turner did. They both worked out together in the Miami area. Nick Bonito, his first year, played like 357 snaps. I know that off the top of my head, 357. It's the same amount of millions of dollars the Vikings are spending on this current roster right now. 357 snaps his first year, very minimal production. And then, if I'm not mistaken, second year had around 7.5 sacks. And then last year was like an all-pro type player at 13.5 sacks. So that arc is sensible. The 2 interceptions, that's lofty. But again, you mentioned the play yesterday in coverage. Like he had the pick last year against Geno Smith in Seattle in the second quarter of that game in the flat. Like he has the ball skills to be able to do that. I mean, my question ultimately will be, how much is he playing off the ball? And like, is that taking snaps from a Ivan Pace? Is that taking snaps from a Josh Metellus potentially, who played a lot as kind of an off-ball linebacker? The Patrick Jones role, like it's sensible. A guy who's an edge rusher just slides inside, but Patrick Jones probably weighed, I want to imagine, maybe like 10, 15 pounds more than he did. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they use him and then what the eventual snap count looks like. It was 300 last year. Does he get to 600? Like what is, I think the question for us is like, what should the expectation be and what's a fair kind of number there?
I'm going to go 560
I like that.
snaps.
I like that.
That seems to me like it's a very significant role, enough on third downs, especially to pick up sacks and make plays. And the interceptions are based on, one time I was watching them last year, and they do this drill where they have the guy drop back and then they just like kind of whip the ball at him. Most of the guys who are outside linebackers, it kind of just bounces around. Dallas Turner was swiping that thing out of the air like he's a tight end. Like he can really catch the football. And I think if they throw it at him, and sometimes we see this with Flores, where those blitzes, or those simulated pressures, you're sending 4, somebody drops back, you don't know where it is, and then all of a sudden Russell Wilson doesn't see anything and throws it right to him, or whoever's playing quarterback, Jackson Dart, by the time they get to the Giants. I could see a couple of picks, but I think the snap count and the sacks are a goofy stat sometimes because everybody gets paid on sacks. You go to the Hall of Fame based on sacks, but it's only 10 plays for Jonathan Grenard out of 1,000
Crazy.
plays. But the 80 pressures for Jonathan Grenard are just as valuable as the sacks because that's consistently throwing the quarterback off. And so if you're talking about him dropping back in coverage and making a nice play in coverage that doesn't get noticed because he's just in the right spot, well, that's going to be a plus for us watching him, but it's not necessarily going to show up in that box score. I just think that there's so much talent on this D line. And that's what we never talk about with young players is what you can surround them with. Last year, he didn't get to play as much because of that, which may ultimately benefit him. But now he's surrounded with pass rushers everywhere, and somebody is going to come free. You can't double team everybody. You can't sort out every single type of different blitz and stunt and twist that they're going to send at him. And we've just seen this from the DJ Wanhams and the Patrick Jones that role tends to be the one where other teams get somebody lost in the shovel, concentrating so much on the other edge rushers that there's some free runs to the quarterback.
You said stunts and in games, like in twists and stuff. We haven't seen a lot of that because, again, like you said, it has been like a passing camp. But that's where, I mean, in another year where the guys who have been in the system can continue to learn, like the Grenards and Van Ginkels, who probably know a lot of the system anyway, your Blake Cashtons, your Ivan Pace, with the amount of fear that the interior guys can now strike into opposing offensive linemen, like the possibilities with being able to loop guy, like and Dallas's athleticism allows for that. But you like you mentioned his ability to drop into coverage, and then last year there was that one sack he had. Can't remember the game where it was like his shoulder got so low to the ground
Chicago.
that it was almost unfathomable how he was able to kind of grab the edge. Like you can understand why the people upstairs 2 floors above us would have been willing to acquire a guy like he is and then he has the mental makeup to want to have gone to Alabama when he could have gone anywhere in the country. He went to a place that is like, I know I'm the Alabama guy, it's kind of a joke, but like that program was, you talk to people around it, it was like a pretty militant style program comparatively, and you're not catered to, like it's all about proving yourself. So, and the other aspect, I mentioned the off the ball play. If he does play off the ball more this year, like the responsibilities that you have to learn to be able to do that, you probably can't pick up as a rookie in the league. So I'm fascinated to see what happens with Dallas Turner this year because I do believe in the talent, and they just have a lot of it. So that's I don't know if like the fans will respond to the amount of interest that I have in it, but I really am very curious about it.
I think it's one of the harder places to be for covering a player when he's going from year 1 to year 2 and you just don't know. Because we've seen this go either way. We've seen players who have had struggles in their first year and then just nothing happens and they never take that next step. Lewis Seen would be one of them. Also, Laquan Treadwell a few years back, where you go into year 2, you kind of hear the reasoning, okay, he's going to take that next step, and then it just doesn't happen. I don't know that there's a good way to project it, but what you have, at least with Dallas Turner, is you have these flashes, you have the increase in snaps, and then you have the trust of the organization to not go get another edge rusher in free agency, which they could have. They've still got cap space. They could have added one more guy. That sounds like another opinion to jump into whether you can decide to pass or play. I am 100% in on the idea of Jalen Ramsey. I think they've made several moves that look just like Jalen Ramsey on this roster. I don't care really what it takes. I think he's a top 10 corner in the league still. And if you can add that to this group, then suddenly you're not asking yourself, well, can Mekhi Blackman do it? Can Isaiah Rodgers do it? You're saying, well, we can rotate those very talented players who are less proven. I mean, Isaiah Rodgers was just a rotational corner and depth on a team that won the Super Bowl. That sounds pretty good to me, even if they love Isaiah Rodgers. But him and Jalen Ramsey with Byron Murphy playing a nickel role and switching in and out, that sounds elite to me.
I'm
I
playing this opinion, absolutely.
I'm not as into the Jair Alexander because I just don't think he's going to play a lot of football games. But you're going to play on this, okay?
Yeah, I'm playing. And it's two separate opinions to react to your opinion. Number one, I do I strongly think that they need another cornerback and some depth at the position. And it's not because I don't believe that Byron Murphy Jr. is a stud. Obviously, I really Isaiah Rodgers. You go back and, or if you're a lunatic like me, you go back and watch some of the tape from last year when he did get in. Like there was a game against the Rams where he played, and he's like, competitive at the catch point with Puka Nacua. It's pretty impressive. And then obviously he started in the past before the suspension for the gambling situation. And then even Jeff Okudah, who I know, like, you look at the PFF grades, terrible. Anecdotally, there's a lot of reason to be skeptical, but his skill set, his length in this specific system, they will maximize what he's capable of. And then Mekhi Blackman, I still believe in. I talked about Zemiah Vaughn, Dwight McGlothern, I like. So I like the room, but in the event that Byron Murphy goes down, or that Isaiah Rodgers goes down, or that Jeff Okudah goes down, or Mekhi Blackman, like, I mean, really, those first three, and specifically Byron Murphy or Isaiah Rodgers, like, I don't feel comfortable then if I'm relying on Isaiah Rodgers and Jeff Okudah and Mekhi Blackman probably as my main trio and nickel. And just as well as I do, like, the odds of a cornerback getting hurt are pretty high throughout the league. So that's my first point is I strongly think they need another cornerback for depth. Now, Jalen Ramsey specifically, I'm not nearly, not even remotely close to as bought into that as you are. And it's mostly just like from a fit standpoint, it's twofold. One, from a playing standpoint and production standpoint, they're like, you can look at a lot of things, and I admittedly need to watch more film to verify this, but talking to people throughout the league, I'm not sure if they're as much. Yeah, I'm not sure if and I have, because I'm curious. I'm not sure if there's as much belief in his ability to, like, play every down corner as it seems like you have. Not play every down, but be like as impactful as I think you're talking about. And then the other aspect of the two-pronged thing with Jalen Ramsey is, like, from a fit, locker room, all of that stuff, just from conversations, I'm not totally sure if I'm all the way bought in there. Now, Jair Alexander, like, you said it. He hasn't been able to stay on the field. He went out on the coin toss in Charlotte because he's from Charlotte, and he thought that's something you could do. And then, like, just all the stuff with Justin over the years, it's kind of a little silly. But the thing with Jair would be, it would probably be a more 1 year type of prove it situation. So a player of that ilk is probably more of where I have my mind focused on than the Jalen Ramsey. But I know you disagree with that.
Well, I don't know Jalen Ramsey's personality. There is a guy who runs this football team as the head coach that would know a lot better than me. So if Kevin O'Connell told me, hey, yeah, but here's what I think about. So just take basketball, for example.
I love basketball.
There was a big fan, dribbling, shooting.
Got a game tonight.
It should be good. We had to wait 6 weeks for game 3. But here's my basketball comparison to this. Is somebody studied the playoffs and who wins, who loses, and why. And one of the conclusions that they came to was that a team like the New York Knicks, one of the reasons that they lose is because they have weak points, that they have weak links. And we've talked about this for different parts of rosters. The offensive line is a good point, where it was shown by a PFF study a few years ago that you can survive one bad offensive lineman, but you can't survive two. And we saw that from the Vikings last year, where you can get away with it for long enough, but if you have 2 weak points, you can't double somewhere. You can't help somewhere twice. You can only do it once. And I think that applies. I think the secondary is like defense in basketball, especially these days with everybody playing zones all the time, that if you have 2 weak points in your secondary, then teams are going to find ways to take advantage. Now, I don't know if Theo Jackson's going to be a weak point or not. I think he's pretty good.
I
We've
like
seen
it.
a lot of camp practices and we've heard a lot of testimonials, but we have not seen it. And the same thing kind of goes for everybody in that group, aside from Byron Murphy and aside from Harrison Smith. But everybody else in the secondary is based on testimonials more than it is actual data. For Jalen Ramsey, this is data from last year where he's a top 10 PFF corner playing 1,000 snaps and while disgruntled still put up a pretty darn good performance. And I think also on a team like this, how gruntled can you be? Or is gruntled the good part of it? How disgruntled can you be when you end up with a team that has a great culture and wins? And one last thing to say about it is just that there is a switch that gets flipped on where it's time to do everything. And I think that moment is now for the Vikings organization. I think you can take risks on these things because you have to. And we see this where even like a Kansas City Chiefs, where one year they go out and get Kadarius Toney, and it's like, okay, I guess. And then he has a game-winning Super Bowl catch for them. Is that a great move to trade for Kadarius Toney? Not really. Did he really produce what they expected? No, but he made one play that got you over the top. And I think someone like Ramsey is a guy who can get you over the top and give you more flexibility, more depth, more options there. And it's just time. If it was last year, I would have said, I don't know. I don't know if it's time yet. 2 years ago, I would have said, definitely don't do stuff like that. Now, this is the moment where winning teams make that one extra play for somebody.
I want you to get to the next opinion because these are phenomenal. But uh, I mean, ownership has really, and this team has really told us that they kind of believe that as well. They've spent $357 million on the 2025 team, which you don't do if you're like, yeah, it might be time. I don't know. Y'all want to spend 357, which is more than any other team in the league is spending in cash on their 2025 roster. Yeah, let's do it. Why not? Who knows if it's time? I mean, there is a serious commitment right now to what this team could be, and that's where I'm with you in that you don't want to look back. I mean, goodness, if it's like, man, if we just had added that one more piece for the secondary that would have, allowed it to rise to the level that it, was that we needed it to. Like, you don't want to look back and kind of regret that being a possibility. Now, they could look at it and say, we think the pass rush is going to be so good that the quarterback's going to have to get the ball out that we don't, we have enough faith that we believe in Mekhi Blackmon if he has to step in. That's where I, as the analyst in my role, would be like, I don't know if I have that level of faith that you do, but they get paid to make these decisions. So it's an interesting and it's a worthwhile conversation, I think.
All right. Next one is Jalen Naylor is going to catch 44 passes for 557 yards and 6 touchdowns this year. And the next best receiver, so it'll obviously be Jefferson, Addison, and then Naylor. The next best receiver will have 9 receptions for 82 yards after those 3 guys. And of course, health pending. I don't see any real competition behind them yet. And this is not to disrespect Ty Felton. I think he's going to need work. We've seen him mostly with second and third teams out here, as he should be developing at this point. I think Naylor took a very clear physical step forward, and this is a big year for him contract wise. I believe it's going to look more like KJ Osborne. And I think that McCarthy's going to spread it around a little bit more than Darnold, who I think focused a lot on getting the ball deep to Addison and Jefferson. I think there's a little more layers to this. I just don't see, unless there's injuries, other guys who are going to compete with that big 3 this year. And again, that does not say what Ty Felton's going to be in the future. I don't know yet. But for right now, it's those receivers and Hawkinson, and Naylor, I think, is set to have a big year and then make $13 million in free agency next year.
I'll play the opinion just to say that I agree with you. I mean, Ty Felton, I've had a lot of questions. You've probably gotten similar questions like, how's he looking? Is he the wide receiver 3? It's like, yes, Jalen Naylor dropped the ball in Los Angeles in a very key spot. And there was another drop last year on deep pass that I'm somehow blanking on.
Tennessee.
Yeah. But like in general, he knows all the positions of the offense, which you and I both know is complicated and complex and takes time. You said the thing about his, how he's reshaped his body. But I've been on the front lines reporting about this. I know it's integral to everybody. But I'm only playing the opinion to say that I agree. Those numbers might be a little high. I mean, Jordan Addison. You mentioned Jefferson and how much you're impressed with him. We haven't talked about Jordan Addison at all this camp, which is a good thing because it probably just means he's here doing what he does. But what he does just impresses me every single day. Like Justin is out there and he's got the gold cleats and it's and Addison's got swag unto himself I mean, I shouldn't be the one, opining on swag, but like Addison is he just moves so fluidly. It just looks so easy for him. He's been out here every day. He's been very engaged every day. And and I mentioned what I already said about Hawkinson earlier in this podcast and the beliefs that I have in terms of what he wants to probably accomplish this year. And among those three, that in my opinion, that probably leaves a little less than 44 opportunities, but that doesn't, I'm not minimizing Jalen Naylor being a key cog.
Well, and I'm factoring in a potential suspension for Jordan Addison and just,
Fair.
maybe even just get banged up a little bit. That happened last year. I agree with you on how he's looked out here. It's plays every single day. It's deep routes. It's going up and getting it. But we've reached the point where it's like, yeah, that's what we expect from him. Next opinion for you then. That one probably should have been a pass if we just sort of agree. Hey,
this is our first time playing the game.
True,
I'm not
true.
right. I mean, it's like any game. You're going to make mistakes, and that's really as a young player in the league. It's about is the teaching and learning phase, and so that's the process that we're undergoing right now.
And that's why I'm not judging too harshly.
Thank you, I
because
appreciate it.
I think if we're just on the same page, then you could just say,
Right.
"Nah, we're on the same page. I'm going to pass."
Okay. I like talking though. So.
Okay, how about this? Will Reichard this year.
I'm not passing on anything Riker related.
Will Reichard will make 92% of his field goals this year and show that he can take what he did in the first half of the season into an entire season, and he'll make the Pro Bowl.
What is 92%? Like, where would that rank? Yeah, I was like, if you know this answer, that'd be incredible.
If I had to get, I'll look it up on my phone.
If the game is, if I agree with you, then pass. Then I'm passing. See, this is the thing. But then I'm not going to get to talk about Will Reichard, which is my favorite pastime.
No, so if you agree but have like a lot more to say,
I don't have much more to say. I mean, it's Will Reichard. He's steely. He's fiery. He doesn't say much. The injury last year was very unfortunate with the way he'd been kicking the ball, but I have questions about a lot of things. I don't have questions about that guy and what he's capable of.
Okay, that's probably a pass then, but that would put him in the top 10.
Okay.
It would put him in the top 10 of it.
You pulled up the kicking stats quickly.
Yeah, I did. Yep. The top kicker in the league last year by percentage was Nick Folk at 95.5%. That was 21 for 22. And the guy who took more than 30, Chase McLaughlin from the Tampa Bay Bucks, was at 93.8%. Percent.
92 is pretty high.
92, it'll get you into the top 10. And so that means
we also have to factor in this. Now that I'm thinking of it, now you really got me on it. I mean, kicking in Dublin, what's that going to look like? London, he looked great last year, I remember. In Tottenham, believe he made like 2 field goals from depth there. I don't know how I remember that. It was raining though that day. So he's proven that he can kick in the elements, but there's elements this year.
Let me try for a Kevin O'Connell angle here, and then I got one more to wrap up that will make you that you have to play. Yeah, very very squirmish. Trying to make this into an opinion rather than a question. Usually, I'm asking questions.
Kevin O'Connell question.
Usually, there can't be Coach of the Year twice. But this might be a unique situation where you're taking a rookie quarterback, essentially rookie, and not truly, but essentially, and you're trying to take him to the top of the division again. I'll say that if the Minnesota Vikings win this division, that Kevin O'Connell will get Coach of the Year consideration, finalist. I got to make it hotter than that. Coach of the Year again. How about that one? You want to talk about O'Connell?
Yeah, I'm always up for talking about Kevin. I mean, man, if back-to-back coach of the year is hard to envision, mostly because these awards, it feels like you just go to the hot thing at the time.
Mhm.
But I mean, if what happens is 11 wins, 12 wins, JJ throws for 3,000 yards. I mean, I don't is that enough?
I think 3,000 yards doesn't get you anywhere, but
3,500? I mean, what's it for? You said 4,000 yards?
I think you gotta be close to
That
4,000
means
to
he's
win.
done it Kevin has had a quarterback here throw for I mean, they've thrown for 4,000 every year, but I mean, you're probably right. If you get to that point and JJ is the talk of the league and the Vikings win this division that is as difficult as it is, and they beat Detroit and maybe like Ben Johnson struggles a little bit. I mean, and part of me is in this conversation trying to imagine who else do I expect to be like in that conversation. And I know this is a Vikings podcast, but like, is Todd Bowles in Tampa Bay? They have a great year. That's a conversation. Like, I don't know who else you toss into the mix, but if they have a season that is in the 95th percentile of what is expected or whatever, like it's gonna and Kevin, you know just as well as I do, he'll be doing interviews and will blow people away in that setting, and that'll help his cause. That's just part of I mean what has made him. He's just incredible in that environment. I can't even minimize it.
Well, there's a few different guys in the NFC that have like pretty clear paths to that. Ben Johnson would be one. If you get the Bears back in the playoffs after they've been such a calamity, you are going to get that attention. How about Dave Canales with how down the Carolina Panthers have been for a long time? If
That's a good
one
one.
team like say, well, how about even just a retroactive almost Dan Quinn? If the Washington Commanders are number one in that division, they beat out the Philadelphia Eagles. You could see that. And, maybe I mean, I don't know. If Pete Carroll makes the playoffs, could they give him like a lifetime achievement coach of the year award? I don't know. It's really more about with Kevin O'Connell last year, we were having a lot of discussions about like, is this real? Is this quarterback whisperer thing that you love so much and keep saying all the time in the media room and writing all the time constantly at the Athletic?
Never been seen.
Is that something that like we were saying last year, is that really real? And we're going to have kind of a test case. And I remember writing about the over under, like if they can't win 6.5 games, this guy's just not a good coach. Their adversity though has been under a different context than what it will be this year. So even go back to 2022 adversity. They didn't have a lot because they won every game at the end. They also had a ton of veteran players, and it was his first year, and they were exceeding expectations by so much, and everyone's sort of riding this roller coaster. The second year, the quarterback goes down. So even as frustrating as some of those losses were, and we criticized the Brandon Powell tush push and Josh Dobbs throwing 35 times when they were running the ball well against Chicago and things like that. But even then, all those sort of came along with, well, look, I mean, they don't have their quarterback, so what
Right.
are you supposed to do?
Jaron Hall against the Packers.
And I was also very patient for that season in general because it was a roster reset type of year. So I didn't think that their roster was really worthy of a team that was seriously competing. And last year had the very much magical, whimsical. They were really good as a team. And Sam Darnold goes to that next level. So we've really never had a year where the pressure is what it is. And I'm sure every NFL person could say to me, well, look, there's always pressure. It's the national football. But when you get coach of the year, you get a huge contract extension, you win 14 games, you change quarterbacks, and then you spend the most money of anybody. And now you are under the white hot light as a team that should be seriously competing for a Super Bowl. And in 2018, this happened the same way. And the Vikings collapsed under that. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying we've seen it. We've seen a lot of teams that they get that offseason hype and they get all that attention, everything else, and the pressure mounts on them. And it becomes a very different world when things go wrong. I think there is probably a ranking of which coaches would you want to try to bring your team through tough times, ups and downs, and O'Connell would be very high on that list for me right now. But that's just something that is going to be a true test of him this season that we have not really seen before.
Well, it's a really tough. It's going to be a tough balance for him, and I'm not sure if I've thought about this until now, but it's like on one hand, if the quarterback play isn't at the level that you really need it to be that elite team. It's like, well, guy, I mean, this is his first real opportunity. But on the other hand, it's like, well, you have such a veteran team. You spent so much on this team. You have so much talent that like we can't really excuse like not rising to that level right now. And that push pull is tough because and I just have to say this, like I can see both sides. I can see if I'm Kevin and I'm like, what do you really expect for this guy in his first year playing quarterback? But then I can also see the fans being like, having spent all this money and having not won a playoff game in 3 years, it's about freaking time that happens. So it is definitely a different set of circumstances that he is operating under, that this team is operating under. And I think, I mean, it's just like you know this, like everything. That's why these seasons are so fun. It's because the circumstances like provide an entire landscape for thinking about things differently. So it is going to be very interesting. But if he shepherds JJ through and this team through and they win 12 games and they win this NFC North, I mean, he's going to get a lot of praise, deservedly so. And so that's just kind of the nature of it.
No one is ever getting that award 2 years in a row, no matter what. But I thought it was a good starting point for a conversation.
Pretty good.
I just think in general that, and this is not the last one, but I'll give you the last one. So you're gonna have to play the last one. So you really only passed on one, and then you should have passed on another.
I don't duck, but you haven't been hot takey enough.
Really? You don't think so? I thought I've turned it up for you. I mean, I was giving Dallas Turner 7.5 sacks. And
that was
Naylor,
a lot. That was a lot. I mean, it was.
Okay. You stick to your job. I'll stick to mine. But I just want to finish that part with it because you mentioned they have a new quarterback and he's young and so forth. And it's about winning windows, 2 or 3 years or however you want to look at it. Here's how I look at it. If you could have brought back Sam Darnold and you could have signed Aaron Rodgers and you chose to go this direction and this was the guy you drafted and you didn't bring back Kirk Cousins and all that, there are no he's young excuses. And if I've seen other quarterbacks at this same age and experience go to the Super Bowl, go to the NFC Championship, there are no excuses. This is a team that should be legitimately competing for a Super Bowl, period, and anything short of that is a disappointment, and missing the playoffs would be a massive, massive disappointment. That doesn't mean fire everybody. That just means the bar shouldn't be couched for me because you've been building for 3 years for this. You have a roster of veteran players who signed here to compete for a championship, not to develop JJ McCarthy. Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, they didn't stop by. Ryan Kelly didn't stop by to be like, oh, maybe 2 or 3 years, we'll see. No, they came here to compete for a championship. Now go do it. Like, and anything less than that is going to get criticized for me. I'm not moving on that standard unless there's a quarterback injury. So
no, that's fair. It would be interesting though, like if there were a level of injuries that like wipe out the clear-eyed evaluation, and then you enter next year, that'd be a weird place to be probably. But I understand that. But I mean, I also like, what is the realistic expectation of a guy in his second year playing this position? Like a realistic expectation. And now these circumstances raise the realistic expectation to a certain level. But I mean, and look, like Super Bowl or in championship, like I get it. And I want that for these people who tune into this show and who read my stuff and I mean, like I really do. And I like, it's not my job to root, but I just care about people and their happiness levels. And so that's the situation. But I don't, it is asking a lot of the quarterback. It is. And I mean, but it's the pros, I guess, asking a lot. That's what it is.
That's how I look at it. No trophies for participation this year for me. I mean, because I've been so in support of this entire journey of how they've gone on with the roster, taking it down, building it up, drafting McCarthy. But you support this journey and are in favor of it to get to a point where you're competing for a Super Bowl. Now that has to happen. And okay, I mean, if they go to the divisional round and lose 34-31, I don't think we're going to say like what a disappointment that was. But I think you got to be playing on the divisional round games, or because then you start talking about going 4 years without a playoff win.
If there's no playoff win after this year, that's going to be tough. I mean, it's going to be very disappointing for everybody. So that I will say that that'd be pretty tough to see.
Okay, just the last one. That went longer than I expected, but just the last one. So keep this one short with your reaction. I haven't really truly thought this out yet, but I'll just off the dome here come up with the JJ McCarthy stat line for this season.
I knew
All
you
right.
were gonna do it.
All right. Sack percentage of no, I'm just kidding. His quarterback rating under pressure is no.
Well, what
Uh,
I saw on Twitter is that he's 900 of 920. Best he's had the best OTA since Tom Brady is what I've seen.
I saw some clown write an article, probably using AI, that he had broken Tom Brady's record for OTA touchdowns. And you know what? I'm here to confirm it.
All right, I don't
That's
want I'm
actually true. So,
let's go with the stat line.
yeah.
Big reveal.
Here's a stat line: 530 pass attempts for 3,852 yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. However, it equates to a 96.8 quarterback rating and a PFF grade that ranks him 11th in the National Football League.
I
What
mean,
do you want to do with that?
I got to say something. What I want to say is if that ends up happening, I mean, everybody should be ecstatic. That's I mean, I don't know what Jordan Love's first year was after, in his third season. Deshaun Watson before I know we all have opinions about Deshaun Watson, but like he was good at the beginning of his career in Houston. I I would be mild, and this is not a knock on JJ at all. Like I'd be mildly surprised if it's 38, 50, 26 and 11. I mean that's a very solid year for a guy in his second season coming off the torn meniscus. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility. Definitely think it is, but to me that's you're really near in the high end.
Anything less, you trade him. No, I'm just kidding.
But like that's the thing. Like if it's like 21 touchdowns, 15 picks, 34-50. Like I'd have to see it all play out, and I'm sure the emotions will live or die or rise or fall based on how it actually looks because I'm a human and that's how things go. But like even that, I think I'd come away being like, you feel pretty good that this guy was able to stay healthy for the full year and accomplish that. But I don't know. Maybe my expectations are not high enough.
The key number there is 11th best quarterback in the league for me because I looked at PFF grade, QB rating, and the completion percentage over expected of all the quarterbacks that made the playoffs last year, and the average ranking of those quarterbacks was 11th. So if you can be the 11th best quarterback in the league, I think that's where you have to be to give yourself a real shot at winning something going into the playoffs. I don't think that now Jalen Hurts, his PFF grade wasn't that great. There was the injury, didn't throw that much. They ran like crazy, et cetera, last year. But if it's going to be very, very hard in a team that passes this much to just be the 17th best quarterback in the league and seriously compete for a championship. So that's where I think the line, you don't need him to be number 3 because I think you can win without that. But if you're not throwing for 3,800 yards, then you're probably ranking in the bottom third of the league in passing. They need to be better than that. I think they need to be a top-notch passing offense in order to be a serious contender, or at least be playing like that through the second half of the year. I'm going to be patient with bounces up and down and bumps along the road, but I think at the end of the day, you better be talking about having one of the better quarterbacks going into the playoffs for how someone's been playing recently, or it's going to be tough.
Here's the one thing we haven't talked about this entire podcast: the run game. Like,
I thought about it.
yeah, I mean, that is going to have to take a major step. And we haven't seen anything in these practices realistic that involves the run game. So scheme, no idea. Gap scheme, zone scheme, anything. And it's not the sexy talker that JJ is. So I don't mean to like go here, but I've been thinking about it. If that is not with the interior improved, with Josh Oliver extended, with Jordan Mason in the fold, if that doesn't take a serious leap with as much too high safety shell as they're going to face because they have the receiving core that they have, then you're not going to put JJ in a position to be to produce the way that I mean, we're talking about right now. And so, like, I get why we don't talk about it on the front end, but I almost want to because it's just so important in my opinion.
They have to be a little more 49ers-y than they've been in previous years, which the benefit of having a really good run game, as we mentioned earlier, is that you have the ball a lot. If you can consistently run and you can convert on short situations, which they did not do really at all last year, and there's a lot of big benefit to that, the play action off of it, which they've been good at drawing up, but can you increase the percentage in which you can do it? So if you run, that's my thing with the run versus the play action. You can still succeed in play action without running well. But when you're running well, you're in a lot of situations to do it. And JJ McCarthy at Michigan was tremendous running play action. He was really good in the preseason game. We've seen him in training camp that I think he's very comfortable under center and in that kind of environment because of where he played in college. So there's a real serious trickle down effect of that. And everything on paper says you can do it. We haven't seen them actually do it. They also haven't really had the pieces to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna pass on that one for right now, though. If you were asking me to play or pass on the run game, and
No, the JJ thing, I mean, no, it's good to be thinking about that, but, I'm telling you, if we get to the end of the season and it's 3,800 yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, I will be I mean, I'll be like, "Salute, that was very well done."
well, the only reason that I would pass on it is that we'll play again sometime. We get this
So corny. So
once
it's just so corny.
once summertime arrives, I get the Porch podcast going, and then it'll be a good time. And then it's training camp, and off
Yeah.
we go. So, Alec Lewis, The Athletic, make sure you go check out his article coming on Ryan Kelly, I assume is who you're talking to today,
Uh,
and a deep analysis of Dallas Turner. I think you, talked to his friends, his family, 37 people that he's ever talked to.
that's exactly right. That's what we do. It's hardcore journalism, long form reporting over at The Athletic. No, it's been good. Thanks for having me as always. I'm looking forward to like a month off and then I mean this training camp, you know how it's gonna be. It's gotta bring your reporter's notebook out there.
When you're not talking about, as we have in so many previous years, like, well, I mean, if this guy, or maybe that's not the way we're talking. I think it's a different place to be for people like us, and it is exciting. So, thank you all for watching/listening, and do subscribe to The Athletic because a lot of big companies are hiring AI to write their articles. So, it's always good if you could support your local beat reporters. Thanks, everybody, for your time. PurpleInsider.football as well. And we'll catch you later. Football.